The Tata Harrier, named after a bird of prey. But will it prey upon its competition or will it be preyed upon? Because the competition is that fierce. Its first competitor is its compatriot, the XUV500, one of the first attempts from Mahindra to build a monocoque chassis, and yet they made it so robust, so rugged, as good as their body-on-frame SUVs. It also contends with the Creta, a car that is so versatile that it has managed to upset everything from a segment lower and a segment higher. But the most fierce competition is this, the Jeep Compass, a car which, on the merit of its capabilities, design and brand value, is absolutely impossible to fight with. So the Harrier, does it even have a chance of survival? Let's find out. The Harrier has a very new age styling theme. It looks very trendy, very modern, very with the times. Looks like what a 2019 representation of the SUV should look like. But a design that radical raises questions on how well it will age, so only time will tell. But everything from its sporty oranges to the corporate white you see here, the Harrier carries it off with authority. With its Land Rover-derived underpinnings, the Harrier is the largest car of this test and is certainly liked by many for its quirky design, heft and presence. The Creta, on the other hand, is the smallest of this test, but it has the classic styling cues of an SUV, and that makes it appear large and imposing enough to justify its price tag. It's also got a very neutral styling that looks quite handsome and appeals to a larger audience. The XUV was once a very handsome looker and has received numerous facelifts over the years in order to stay relevant. Though the design is showing its age now, the XUV's size gives it the street presence which continues to work in its favor. The Jeep Compass looks compact in comparison to the XUV500 and the Tata Harrier, but I think this is the most well-balanced design of these four. It has everything from old-school styling cues to the new-age ornamentation to that prominent Jeep grille, and it's all very nicely put together. That gives it a premium poise and a design that will age well. In my books, I think this is the best-looking car out of these four, and it's a design that looks equally good whether it's cleaned up or played dirty. Speaking of playing dirty, these cars are not just urban SUVs. Going off the beaten path is also expected of them quite often, as adventure touring and road tripping is becoming all the more popular in this segment. There are a fair amount of expectations that anyone would have in terms of off-roading with the Harrier. That is because of its Land Rover Discovery underpinnings. Now, those headlamps mounted in the bumpers are a bit of a concern when you're driving in bushy trails, but apart from that, it's got a fair degree of ground clearance, it's got a fair degree of suspension travel, and there's a good low-end torque from this engine, all of which gives it good confidence to go off the beaten path. To that effect, it also has multiple driving modes that alter the response of the engine and the traction control for a more involving drive, and all of it works quite nicely. On the road, the Cryotech engine has a laid-back vibe to it though. Its 140 PS tune and the heft make it significantly slow in its outright acceleration, even in the sport mode. But its in-gear acceleration figures are very similar to the others, meaning that it feels just as effortless to drive. The power deficit is only evident when you're traveling with a full house or attempting overtakes at highway speeds. The Harrier loses points on refinement as the engine is noisy and there's a fair bit of drivetrain lash even on the production car. For this test, the Creta is easily the benchmark for the performance figures and also the drivetrain and the powertrain refinement. It is the smallest engine of this test, but it feels lightning fast. It feels so much more athletic than the other three cars. It impresses in the city and even on the highway. The Creta is quite impressive off the beaten path too. It doesn't look like it's made for dirt and stones, but it takes on trails quite well. Its suspension does get a bit noisy when you drive it on rocky trails, but it makes its way through such roads without much drama. The Mahindra XUV500 feels like a typical capable Mahindra when it comes to tackling the trails. It also has a wide variety of drivetrain options for your liking, for whatever suits you. Automatic, manual, front wheel drive, all wheel drive, take your pick. Spec it up with the right set of tires and the XUV500 will also take on the kind of trails that the Creta or the Harrier will want to turn a blind eye to. Despite constant updates, its engine feels quite unrefined compared to its new age competition. Save for that, the engine performs quite well and is tuned to work tirelessly even with 7 people on board. And then you drive the Jeep Compass and you understand why Tata decided to go with this engine for the Tata Harrier. It's of course a different state of tune in the Compass. This one's more powerful and it shows. It is a quick engine. There's always power and torque available on tap. So whether you're pulling overtakes at highway speeds or just ambling around in the city, there's no problem at all. In the city, however, there's one little issue, and that is the clutch. The clutch pedal is very heavy and that can get quite cumbersome. In fact, if city driving is going to be your only purpose for having a car in this category, then look elsewhere, don't get the Compass. Otherwise, it's an excellent car. It drives really well both on and off the road, and that is what I really love it for. Oh, and unlike most entry-level offerings from the premium brands, this car actually encompasses everything that the Jeep brand stands for. Its front-wheel driven variant is quite a capable car in itself, but the all-wheel drive variant is the one to go for if you are into adventure touring. In fact, this particular Compass that I'm driving is also my long-term test car, and I've put it through 20,000 plus kilometers of highways and twisties and sand and rock, and never had I had a need to be rescued from any of those situations. It's gotten itself out of tricky situations without any problems at all. Of course, it's not as accomplished as something like the Ford Endeavour or the Toyota Fortune or even the MUX for that matter. But if you want 75% of those capabilities at 60% of the price, the Compass is your car. The Land Rover underpinnings give the Harrier the required level of rigidity and robustness, while at the same time it has that plushness that you expect from a Tata SUV. The Harrier impresses with its ride quality, whether you're driving alone or even with a full house. You're driving over sharp bumps, through potholes, and it maintains its composure quite well. But the handling, unfortunately, that's not as impressive. Its heft is evident around bends, imparting understeer. The steering refuses to weigh up even at highway speeds, and because it doesn't feel very precise, you often find yourself correcting your line through a bend. The Harrier has excellent high-speed stability though, which gets even better with a full house. The Creta handles quite well. In fact, the suspension setup complements the athletic nature of the engine quite well. The ride quality, even that is nice. It's impressed us in the past when we've compared it to the other compact SUVs. It's really impressed us a lot. But in this particular company right now, it gets outclassed very easily. The XUV500's ride is quite cushy, but it's so softly sprung that it feels wallowy and unnerving at highway speeds. That also hampers its handling characteristics, as the car has a pronounced nosedive at turn-ins and needs constant corrections. It has a marginally better steering feel than the Harrier, but the wallowy nature shaves points for the XUV. But the benchmark for handling in this category has to be the Compass. So much so that we have actually gone ahead and given it a maximum 10 points for its handling. Everything from trails to even the racetrack, this car has left us impressed with the way it handles. The steering setup, the suspension setup, the way it tackles bends, it's just perfect for this category. There is a firm edge to the ride quality, but the way it flattens out those mid-corner bumps, the way it takes everything that the Indian roads have to throw at it, I think they've got the perfect setup for the Indian roads with the Jeep Compass. It's so much enjoyable to drive that, like I said, for me, it is the benchmark for handling in this price bracket. The Harrier didn't quite impress us with the braking, not only because of the significantly longer braking distance, but also because of an inconsistent brake pedal feel. The Creta, XUV500 and the Compass are closely matched on their braking manners, but it's the Compass that has the most progressive brake pedal feel. All the 4 cars of this test are closely matched on the safety features too. However, the Harrier and the XUV offer a hill hold assist, while the Compass is the only one with an automatic parking brake. The cabin of the Tata Harrier has a pleasing vibe to it. It welcomes you with a really nice ambience. I like the layout, I like the materials used. However, the user experience, it could have been better. There are a few things here and there which sort of mar the user experience. For example, the USB port. It's so difficult to reach that you want to leave your cable in there instead of trying to look for that port every day. Even the instrumentation, some of the telltale lights are so difficult to read that it can actually be unsafe. I have to literally look very closely at it to see what it says. Even some of the menus on the infotainment are not as intuitive. Had they addressed these issues before putting this car into production, it would have sort of made the user experience a little better. All of this, you will get used to it, you will find your work around it, so it's not that big a deal, but at this price point, I want it a little better. That is also true for the kind of materials that I use. They are really good materials. All the fit and finish is so nice. It gives you a nice premium feel inside this cabin, so much so that it actually leaves you wanting for more. You want better creature comforts, you want more features, and at the moment, the Harrier's kit is not that strong. Where the Harrier impresses further is with the back seat. Apart from being the most spacious car of this test, it is also the most comfortable on the seating. Add to it the benchmark ride quality of this car and you're looking at the best chauffeur-driven option this side of 20 lakh rupees. When it comes to features, it's the Creta that gives you the fattest list. Its only downer is the cabin design, which is now far too common, with even the Santro taking a similar approach. But features like wireless charging, a sunroof, plenty of charging ports, a slick infotainment system, power adjustment for the driver's seat, it all lifts the feel-good factor for this cabin. The XUV500 trumps the Creta's features list with its automatic headlamps and wipers and a tire pressure monitoring system, but all of it comes at a hefty price tag. The main draw for the XUV, however, is its exclusive 7-seater configuration. So if you necessarily need a third row of seats, then this, the Innova and the Hexa are your only options at the moment. And the XUV500 is the most SUV-ish of them all. Until of course, the 7-seater Harrier comes out later this year. The cabin of the Jeep Compass looks quite tight, but it actually isn't. There's ample room in here. In fact, I have gone road tripping with 3 adults in the back and none of them have really complained about anything. The ride comfort is good, the overall ride quality is good, and the overall comfort levels of the seating is also quite nice. I would have liked slightly different bolstering for the front seats, especially the bolstering on the sides. It's a little too low, so if you're a shorter driver, it ends up sort of intruding into your shoulders every now and then, and that can be a little cumbersome. Otherwise, there's no real complaint at all from the seating or the comfort of this car. The cabin, all the elements are very nicely put together. Everything has a very intuitive interface. The user experience is quite good. So even though this is not the most feature-rich car of this comparison, it has a very high degree of feel-good factor, and that is thanks to all the intuitive interfaces and all the attention to detail that this car has, including down to the rubber mats inside this cabin. So the feel-good factor is really nice, and that is why it scores top points. But the Compass also charges a big premium for all these attributes. In fact, it is the priciest car of this test, though a longer list of trims means that there is a compass for every pocket size within this bracket. The Creta is in fact the cheapest car of this test, and yet it has a really fat list of features which works in its favor. It makes it the most value for money offering of these four. The Harrier and the XUV500 offer the most space for the buck, and therefore they tie with the compass despite not feeling as premium. The 7-seater Harrier will certainly change the proposition, and furthermore, the lack of the kit that we are complaining about at the moment will be addressed soon, promises Tata. The current kit has allowed Tata to price the Harrier quite competitively, and pricing it so has left enough room to introduce a range of feature and mechanical updates, which will make it a much stronger proposition than what it is right now. Compared to the Harrier though, the Creta isn't as spacious, but in the bargain, it is a car that is more agile and easy to use in the urban environment. The Compass, on the other hand, manages to achieve a fine balance between all these attributes, which not only shows on the points table, but also justifies its tall price tag. The Harrier rivals a lot more than just those three cars. It also rivals three different schools of thought. You see, the XUV500 would like you to think of it as a very robust, or the most robust 7-seater alternative in this space. The Creta, on the other hand, would like you to believe that it is probably all the SUV that you will ever need. And then you have the Compass, which gives you the feeling of being a higher race in the various rungs of SUVs available in the market today. The Harrier has a slightly different school of thought. It seems like it wants to be a Compass in the price range of the Creta. But in its current state of tune, with the kind of kit it offers, it doesn't really do that. I know it is a more solid alternative than the XUV500, but it doesn't really trump the Creta on its features, or doesn't really trump the Compass on that premium appeal. If you and I were to agree that design is more of a personal preference, then the only other main draw for the Harrier is its space. But then we are not comparing these four cars only on the merit of their space. There's a lot more going for them. And when you sum it up all together, you realize that on the points table, the Creta and the Compass lead the charts. And once again, on the merit of its capabilities both on and off the road, the Compass edges ahead to be the clear winner of this test.